Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join me as we explore Southwest's lost historical characters, stunning desert vistas, forgotten Native American history, or tales of lost gold mines. There's always something new to discover. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Southwest Desert, the channel that takes you on a journey through the history and legends of the American Southwest. Today, we're exploring a fascinating piece of Western history, the Old Spanish Trail. Imagine this. It's the mid-1800s and you're a trader or explorer making your way from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Los Angeles, California. The Apache are on the warpath, making the direct route too dangerous. What do? You take the long way around, following a winding path north through Utah. This circuitous route became known as the Old Spanish Trail, and it's a tale of adventure, commerce, and survival that shaped the American Southwest. The story of the Old Spanish Trail begins long before it earned its name. Spanish expeditions from Santa Fe had pushed as far north as the mouth of the Gunnison River, near what's now Grand Junction, Colorado, by 1776. That same year, Father Escalante attempted to blaze a route from there to Monterey, California. His party became the first group of white men to enter Utah, though they never made it to California. Escalante's route took them through the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah to Utah Lake, then south to Lee's Ferry, northeast to Crossing of the Fathers where they crossed the Colorado River, and finally back to Santa Fe. While Escalante didn't complete his intended journey, he laid the groundwork for future explorers. Fast forward to 1830. A group of 10 trappers led by William Wolfskill decided to pick up where Escalante left off. They set out from Santa Fe, determined to find a route to California. But instead of following Escalante's northern detour, they cut a more direct path. They crossed the Green River at what is now the town of Green River, Utah, made their way through the Wasatch Mountains to present-day Parowan, followed the Santa Clara River, crossed the desert to Las Vegas, Nevada, and finally reached California. This route, first traveled by Wolfskill and his companions, became the Old Spanish Trail. Starting in 1831, it was used annually by trading expeditions, gradually evolving into a well-beaten road that remained in use until 1852. Now let's paint a picture of what life was like on the Old Spanish Trail. Imagine you're Kit Carson, the famous frontiersman, riding eastward from Los Angeles in the spring of 1848. You're carrying dispatches from Colonel John C. Fremont, and you've just overtaken a caravan heading back to Santa Fe after a trading expedition to Los Angeles. What you see is a spectacle of frontier life. Picture more than 200 Mexicans dressed in every style imaginable, from wealthy Californians in embroidered jackets with silver buttons to Native Americans in simple animal skins. The caravan stretches for over a mile with horses, mules, and even the occasional burro carrying goods and supplies. Many of these travelers are poorly armed. Some carry only short bows and arrows, while others clutch old English muskets that look more likely to explode in their hands than fire accurately. A few have old rusty dragoon sabers, practically useless in a fight. This diverse, colorful, and somewhat ragtag group gives us a glimpse into the melting pot of cultures and classes that use the Old Spanish Trail. As you continue your journey east, you approach the future site of Parowan, Utah. Here, you encounter a fascinating character, Wakara, also known as Walker, the chief of all the Utah Native Americans. Wakara has set up camp near where the trail enters the Wasatch Mountains, and he's not there by chance. Wakara is a businessman, and a clever one at that. He's realized that it's far more profitable to collect toll from the trading caravans than to attack and rob them. By allowing safe passage through his territory for a fee, he ensures a steady stream of income without disrupting the valuable trade route. But toll collection isn't Wakara's only business venture. He's also involved in a more controversial trade, selling Native American children captured from weaker tribes to the traders, who then sell them at a profit in Santa Fe. This practice, while abhorrent to modern sensibilities, was an unfortunate reality of the time. Despite its importance as a commercial highway in the Southwest, the old Spanish Trail remained something of a mystery for many years. Surprisingly, not a single traveler along this route ever kept a detailed, day-by-day journal of their experiences. This lack of documentation made it challenging for modern researchers to accurately trace the trail's path. In fact, although it was the earliest trail used by white men in Utah, it was the last to be definitively located. The section between Green River and Parowan, Utah, through mountainous country, was particularly elusive. Our story now shifts to a century later. In the 1940s, a historian and explorer named Charles Kelly had been working to trace out all the early trails through Utah. From Escalante's 1776 expedition to the Donner Party in 1846, Kelly used journals and records to determine their routes with reasonable certainty. But the old Spanish Trail remained elusive. That is, until a conversation with Howard Blackburn, a longtime resident of Loa, Utah. Blackburn, who was 8 years old when his family founded the town, remembered a wide, well-beaten Native American trail that came out of the mountains from the north, passing just west of town. This trail, as wide as any modern road and visible for miles, was still being used by Native Americans when Blackburn first arrived in 1879. This information was the key Kelly needed. The geography of the area meant that the old Spanish Trail had to pass somewhere in that vicinity. Further confirmation came from an old journal written by George Washington Bean, another pioneer of Wayne County, Utah. Bean's journal provided a crucial piece of information about an expedition led by John Charles Fremont in the winter of 1853. Fremont, exploring a potential railroad route, had been forced to cache all of his goods in deep snow so that the pack animals could be eaten to prevent starvation. The location of this cache had been a mystery, but Bean's journal revealed that it was near the present town of Fremont. This information, combined with Blackburn's recollection of the old trail passing just west of Fremont, not only helped to identify the route of the old Spanish Trail, but also explained the origin of the town's name. With these clues, Kelly was able to piece together much of the route of the old Spanish Trail through Utah. From the Green River crossing, it went west across a desert to the head of San Rafael River, then south and southwest past the sites of Castle Dale and Emory. It followed along the east base of Thousand Lake Mountain to a creek and up that stream to the summit near the head of Salina Canyon. From there, it crossed the mountain and went down the south slope to the present site of Fremont, passing just east of Fish Lake. Continuing west of Loa, it passed down Grass Valley to present Antimony, then turned west through Kingston Canyon to Junction. The trail then turned south, following what is now US 89 to within 10 miles of Panguitch, where it went west across Bear Valley and emerged on US 91 a few miles north of Paragona. The final stretch went south through Parowan, past Little Salt Lake to Enterprise, through Mountain Meadows and down Santa Clara Canyon to Virgin River. One of the most fascinating aspects of tracing the old Spanish Trail has been the discovery of inscriptions left by travelers. In Braffett Canyon, near Paragona, Utah, researchers found a cross carved on a rock with the initials AWLB and the date 1831. Nearby, on a large boulder, the word gold was cut in reversed lettering, sparking local legends of buried treasure. In Santa Clara Canyon, the name Louis Rivard was found cut into the rock. Research revealed that Rivard was likely a French trapper who had been part of the Astorians outbound from St. Louis in 1810 to 11, and later a member of Captain Stansbury's expedition of 1849 to 50, which made the first survey of Great Salt Lake. These inscriptions, while rare, have been invaluable in confirming the route of the trail and providing glimpses into the lives of those who traveled it. The Old Spanish Trail, though less famous than some other pioneer routes, played a crucial role in the early history of the American Southwest. Over its winding path traveled many of the most famous names in Western history. Kit Carson carrying dispatches for the president, John C. Fremont on his various exploring expeditions, Pegleg Smith and Chief Wakara on horse-stealing expeditions to California, Antoine Robidoux trading and trapping, Miles Goodyear heading out to stock the first ranch in Utah, and Marcus Whitman on his legendary ride to save Oregon. Today, much of the trail can still be followed, sometimes by car, sometimes only by sheep trails. It stands as a testament to the courage, ingenuity, and perseverance of the early explorers and traders who helped to shape the American West. As we come to the end of our journey along the Old Spanish Trail, we're left with a profound appreciation for the hardships and adventures of those who traveled it. From Spanish explorers to American trappers, from Native American chiefs to frontier traders, this trail saw a diverse cast of characters who all played a part in the grand story of the American West. The Old Spanish Trail may be silent now, its path overgrown in many places, but its legacy lives on. It reminds us of a time when the West was still wild, when brave individuals set out into the unknown, facing dangers and hardships we can scarcely imagine today. As you go about your day, perhaps driving on highways that in some places follow the very route of the Old Spanish Trail, take a moment to remember those intrepid travelers of the past. Their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs are woven into the very fabric of the land, a hidden history waiting to be rediscovered. This has been the Southwest Desert. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time along the Old Spanish Trail. Until next time, keep exploring and remember, every trail tells a story. Greetings, listeners, and welcome to an episode of Southwest Desert, your video cast devoted to the intriguing history and forgotten tales of the Southwest. I'm your host, Alan, and today we'll be diving deep into the story of the Bradshaw Road, an important transportation route that connected the coast to the gold fields along the Colorado River in the heady days of the 1860s. Few traces remain today of this once vital stagecoach line that shot to prominence seemingly overnight, carrying hopeful prospectors and adventurers into the trackless deserts and beyond. While short-lived, the Bradshaw Road was a lifeline that nourished the mines and towns which sprouted up along the Colorado during the frenzy of the gold rush. The road evokes images of dusty wilderness trails, ramshackle mining camps, dry desert riverbeds and oases, dangerous bandits and entrepreneurs looking to strike it rich, whether by digging in the mines or running services to support the miners. Above all, the story of the Bradshaw Road reveals the ambition and risk-taking spirit of Western pioneers. The tale begins in the spring of 1862, when the twin towns of Los Angeles and San Bernardino were but sleepy backwaters in Southern California, still part of Mexico just 16 years prior. That tranquility was shattered when news arrived of gold discovered hundreds of miles away at La Paz near the Colorado River. We'll learn how the promise of quick riches set events in motion that led to the creation of the Bradshaw Road and made it a key transportation corridor for a brief, chaotic period. The founding of the Bradshaw Road has its roots in early 1862 when an intrepid explorer and prospector named Paulino Weaver made a lucky discovery that ignited the Colorado Gold Rush. Weaver was a seasoned mountain man who had been trapping and guiding expeditions in the far western frontiers for decades. While exploring along the Colorado River some 70 miles north of Yuma, Weaver uncovered placer gold deposits in the gravel of an arroyo. Placer mining involves sifting through sediment for precious metal flakes and nuggets washed downstream from hard rock veins. It was far easier than underground mining and opened a frenzied new gold rush. Weaver knew he had made a monumental find. He collected some placer gold in a hollow goose quill and set out for Fort Yuma, a U.S. Army outpost near the confluence of the Gila and Colorado rivers. At the frontier fort, Weaver's gold samples created instant excitement. He had sparked a rush to stake claims along the Colorado. Word quickly spread beyond Fort Yuma to other towns and military outposts. In Los Angeles, the promise of easily harvested gold nuggets worth a small fortune captivated residents just emerging from isolation. Veterans, laborers, merchants, and drifters alike saw the potential for instant wealth. The problem was reaching the remote strike zone on the Colorado, which lay over 200 rugged miles across blistering deserts from the coastal population centers. No overland trail for wagons existed to access the gold fields, but a new route was soon pioneered out of necessity to feed the mushrooming boomtown of La Paz near Weaver's discovery. This first crude desert passage relied on trails blazed by native guides like Chief Cabazon of the Cahuilla tribe. Enter the trailblazer William Bill Bradshaw, a frontier character etched from the same cloth as Kit Carson or Davy Crockett. Bradshaw was described by his peers as having a natural lunatic, daring, and resourcefulness. Though not its original pioneer, the trail between San Bernardino and La Paz quickly became known as the Bradshaw Road due to Bradshaw's promotion of its route through San Gorgonio Pass. Previously, travelers had several inconvenient options to reach the Colorado gold fields. One was to take steamboats up the Colorado River from the Gulf of California. Another was an arduous trek over the Mojave Trail, which branched off the old Butterfield Overland stagecoach line through Warner's Ranch. Bradshaw believed he had discovered a superior path in the San Gorgonio Pass. Situated between the towering San Jacinto and San Gorgonio Mountains, the low 2,300-foot pass had been mapped but not fully developed. Under Bradshaw's guidance, the rough trail was widened to accommodate wagons, and a series of dug wells and primitive campsites were established. Thus, by mid-1862, an operable road stretched over 200 miles from San Bernardino through San Gorgonio Pass and on to La Paz. Bradshaw himself led many parties that summer across the harsh expanse, avoiding major loss of life despite the extreme conditions. His transportation link between California's coast and the booming mines was open for business. With the Bradshaw Road established, travel and commerce between the coast and the Colorado River mining districts could begin in earnest. The road represented a lifeline to the fledgling boom towns and choppy placer operations along the formerly ignored river. Regular stagecoach service commenced in September 1862 under the upstart partners Warren Hall and Henry Wilkinson. Their express company brought exciting tales of new strikes and the first shipments of gold bullion to wow residents of Los Angeles. On their maiden voyage, Hall and Wilkinson transported an astonishing $6,000 of placer gold on just one wagon. The enterprising duo likely had little notion their transportation business would be short-lived. Barely a month after launching, they were murdered by a rogue employee at Smith Stage Station near Beaumont. Such violence was commonplace on the lawless frontier. Undeterred by the risks and chaos, new express firms popped up to meet surging demand. Traffic on the Bradshaw Road intensified through 1863 as speculators, settlers, and opportunists flooded into La Paz. At its peak, some 1,500 inhabitants called La Paz home. From this dusty miner town on the Colorado, a web of new trails fanned out to explore mineral deposits in the surrounding mountains. It was said that even cheap Native American laborers pocketed the princely sum of $10 per day. Tales of loose gold lying on the ground for the taking fired the imaginations of people across the frontier. Most travelers heading west from San Bernardino made the arduous trek on foot or horseback. For comfort and protection from bandits, stagecoach companies offered regular passenger services along the Bradshaw Road. Firms like L.A. Frink and Amp Company carried mail bags stuffed with hopeful dispatches between the mining districts and the outside world. The most successful stagecoach operator was the well-financed John Butterfield, who already ran the Butterfield Overland Trail through Arizona. This competing southern route was direct, but crossed even more inhospitable desert. For a time, the Butterfield and Bradshaw lines raced to carry the most passengers and mail contracts between California and points east. The Bradshaw Road proved the superior path, sealing its status atop the transportation network serving the lower Colorado River basin. The Bradshaw Road boasted several way stations providing respite from the harsh desert crossing. Leaving San Bernardino, coaches stopped at Whitewater Station along the dry wash of the same name. Further out, the Dos Palmas Station offered relief at a desert oasis. Drivers changed teams at Palm Springs, located then as now at a natural springs. Beyond lay the Bradshaw ferry crossing of the Colorado River itself. Enterprising businesses at ferry landings and way stations sustained themselves by charging exorbitant prices for liquor, food, and lodging. Banditry and gun violence plagued remote stops like Chuckawalla Wells and Myers Creek Station. Holdups were common. Ownership of the stations changed hands multiple times, with proprietors selling out after losing patience with the chaos. The wild ride did not last long. The fragile boom towns had sprung up overnight on the fickle promise of easily harvested surface gold deposits. But these placer sources were quickly exhausted, leaving only marginal deposits. By 1865, the population of La Paz had collapsed as people rushed to new strikes elsewhere. The abrupt demise of La Paz sounded the death knell for the Bradshaw Road as a principal transportation artery. With no bonanza to support it, the road reverted to a lightly used route. The stagecoach line struggled on with subsistence traffic for a few years after 1865. The Butterfield Overland Stage through Arizona siphoned away most remaining overland mail and passenger contracts. Sporadic mining persisted along the Colorado, but major strikes never returned after the initial boom. Still, the Bradshaw Road remained the best available passage through the forbidding desert interior. The federal government awarded subsidized mail contracts to keep coach service limping along. Companies like Tomlinson's Mail and Express fought for the San Bernardino to Prescott Run as late as 1868. Outlaws and bandits continued to haunt lonely way stations like Chuckawalla Springs, where holes in the adobe walls provided mute evidence of violent frontier justice. Stagecoach travel remained a dangerous endeavor on this forgotten trail. Holdups by robbers after non-existent gold shipments were still common. The Bradshaw Road remained in intermittent use for over a decade after its heyday. But time and technology were not on its side. The proliferation of the railroad across the West in the late 1860s allowed rapid transit of people and commerce that made stagecoaches obsolete. The final nail in the coffin came in 1877, when the Southern Pacific Railroad completed its line connecting Los Angeles through San Gorgonio Pass to the Colorado River at Yuma. Almost overnight, the railroad destroyed the rationale for maintaining the arduous Bradshaw stagecoach route. With trains now crisscrossing the region, the road faded quickly from memory and significance. Segments were appropriated by local farmers and settlers, while other stretches reverted to desert wilderness. Parts of the old roadbed can still be traced today by adventurous hikers, 4WD enthusiasts, and historians. The Bradshaw Road was destined to be a transient phenomenon from its beginning, yet the legacy of the Bradshaw Road far outlives its short career. While an obscure footnote today, the stagecoach line left an enduring mark on the development of Southern California. Its path through San Gorgonio Pass fixed this corridor as the preferred crossing of the desert. Later transportation networks followed the wisdom of the Bradshaw Road pioneers. Route 99 and later Interstate 10 carried vehicles along the identical passage first graded by Bradshaw's sweat and sinew. The utility of the forgotten stagecoach route is enshrined in the perpetual stream of traffic still flowing daily through San Gorgonio Pass. Each truck, train, and car traces the path first opened by ox teams and courageous stage drivers chasing short-lived dreams in the California desert. Perhaps the greatest legacy is how the Bradshaw Road crystallized the get-rich-quick mentality that has long animated Southern California's development. For a few brief years, the road pumped lifeblood into ramshackle mining camps and tent towns that arose full of bravado and faded just as quickly when the bonanza played out. The Bradshaw Road embodied the ever-fleeting promise of overnight prosperity, which contains ample lessons for modern Californians beguiled by the latest real estate or technology booms. Our shared history reminds us that while fortunes can disappear overnight, the works and culture we create together endure long after the frenzy subsides. Our journey along the forgotten Bradshaw Road has revealed how this short-lived transportation route left an enduring mark on Southern California. For a time, it succeeded in linking the ports of Los Angeles and San Diego to the boom towns sprouting up along the Colorado River. Today, little but ghostly graded traces remain of the former transportation artery. Yet the road's legacy is enshrined in the railroad and highway corridors that still funnel traffic along the route it pioneered. In our next episode, we'll explore another chapter in the fascinating history of the region's development, settlement, glory, and decline. We hope you'll join us again. Welcome to another episode of the Southwest Desert. In this episode, we will delve into early Southwest Desert pioneering and conflicts with the Mojave Native Americans. Also, we will cover the beginnings of Fort Mojave. In 1857, Congress approved $300,000 to build 3 wagon roads connecting the east and west coasts of America. At the time, California newspaper editors complained this was far too little money for the massive project. But the country was divided over slavery, with some states threatening secession. Getting any federal money at all for Western infrastructure was fortunate. Army Lieutenant Edward Fitzgerald Beale was tasked with surveying a route for one of these roads, from Albuquerque to Los Angeles. He was allotted just $50,000 for a 1,500-mile road across barren desert and towering mountains. But Beale had faith the project would succeed. His proposed route followed Old Highway 66, swinging south past Inscription Rock and Zuni Pueblos in New Mexico, then crossing the high deserts of northern Arizona where water and grass could be found. The trail entered Mojave tribal lands along the Colorado River, where the natives guarded the fertile bottomlands and did not welcome outsiders. Seeing the need to protect immigrants who would soon use this road, Beale recommended establishing an army outpost at the river crossing. But action from Washington was slow. A year later, the first wagon train attempted Beale's route, and the consequences were tragic. In spring 1858, a party of men, women, and children left Iowa to try the new Beale Road to California. At Albuquerque, they joined another group, bringing their number to 123 men, 33 women, and 47 children. Their journey grew difficult, with scarce water and grazing. Reaching the Colorado River brought no relief, even though the shining ribbon of water was finally in view after days of thirst. It took 3 more agonizing days down precipitous terrain to actually reach the banks. They made camp in a stand of cottonwoods along the river. But while the immigrants rested, Mojave warriors swam the river and gathered on the far shore, bows held above water. The white travelers noticed, but did not expect real danger from natives with such primitive weapons. Their confidence was grievously misplaced. On August 1, 1858, at noon, the Mojave attackers hidden in the brush let fly a torrent of arrows into the exposed camp. Men scrambled for their rifles while women and children fled to shelter. The surprise was complete. The Mojave killed 8 men from the rear wagons before warriors surfaced to stop the rest from reinforcing their comrades. The immigrants were outmatched, but they put up a bitter defense, fighting for their lives as afternoon wore on. The Mojave finally withdrew at sunset, driving off most of the livestock, their victory complete. Half the immigrants were wounded. With so little left, the pioneers reluctantly retreated towards Albuquerque that night, carrying their casualties and expecting ambush at any moment. Back at the campsite, the Mojave celebrated by burning the abandoned wagons and supplies. After further deprivation, the tattered remnants of the wagon train finally reached safety. Their terrible experience galvanized public support for Army intervention. By December, mass meetings produced a resolution calling for a military post on the Colorado River to pacify the Mojave. This time, there was no delay. In early 1859, 4 companies of Army infantry embarked by ship for the Colorado River Delta. It was hardly an easy deployment. The ships ran aground. Then soldiers packed into shallow draft paddle wheelers had to slog through 200 miles of shifting sandbars just to reach Fort Yuma. Temperatures over 90 degrees racked the men used to San Francisco's cool climate. They even named their miserable encampment Camp Dirty. Finally, orders arrived to march upriver into Mojave lands. No tents or excess gear came along. Each man hauled his own kit through the barren landscape. The 6th Infantry's veterans mocked the steaming flats near the Colorado as worse than Mexico or Utah. But under experienced mountain guides, David Mackenzie and the famous Joe Walker, they followed the river north, skirting the villages of peaceful Chemehuevi people. Strange glyphs and medicine signs also appeared, possibly meant to hex the soldiers' passage. On April 17th, emissaries from the Mojave tribe arrived, expecting to meet Colonel Hoffman, self-styled Chief of the Tall White Hat. Hoffman informed them he would hold council with their leaders on the 23rd, near Beale's fateful crossing. There, a field of broken wagons and household ruins still lay, including the cottonwood tree where the first immigrant died. It was a charged location for negotiations. On the 23rd, some 500 Mojave gathered as Colonel Hoffman formally raised the U.S. flag for the first time in their lands. A brush arbor kept the sun off attendees. 6 Mojave headmen, including one leader called Kairuk, attended. There was tension as armed soldiers subtly ringed the area, provoking consternation among the natives. The council itself was frustrated by language barriers. An elder of the Yuma tribe played interpreter between English, Spanish, Yuma, and finally Mojave leaders. Colonel Hoffman bluntly threatened destruction upon the Mojave if they continued attacks. They must surrender both the ringleaders responsible for the immigrant attack and members of prominent families as hostages of good behavior. Extreme terms indeed, but the numerically weaker Mojave ultimately acquiesced. 9 of their chiefs went as prisoners to Fort Yuma in irons. This was clearly conquest by intimidation. In subsequent days, the Army selected a site for its new outpost, disregarding pleas to instead locate on the far shore. Their reasoning is unclear, but they prioritize proximity to the Immigrant Trail and Colorado River crossing. With raw materials from the floodplain forest, Fort Mojave rose swiftly. But the heat was just as intense as summer came on. Thermometers read 118 degrees in the shade. Duty here was punishment for man and beast alike. The post was operational for just 2 years before events in the East took precedence. In 1861, during the opening months of the Civil War, federal troops were ordered away to protect Southern California from secessionist intrigues. Quickly, the Mojave resumed their former habits of raiding both settlers and travelers. Only in 1863 did soldiers grudgingly return to man Fort Mojave once more. A visitor in 1871 left us a description of this sun-baked sentinel. It is about 7 miles below Hardeeville, close to the Colorado River and hotter than the hinges of any preacher's hell. It is a well-built, clean, comfortable post, and we may suppose far preferable as a summer residence to Hell or Fort Yuma, although its occupants claim it is hotter than either of those places. Indeed, Major Pond, the gentlemanly commandant, assured us that he had frequently seen the mercury rise up to stand at 118 degrees in the shade. Surely the troops garrisoning this remote outpost paid heavily in human suffering to realize America's vision of manifest destiny. Their sacrifices brought the first permanent colonial foothold into Mojave tribal lands. While securing vital routes for American commerce and migration, the post also foretold the inevitable decline for the Mojave way of life along their ancestral river valley. We remember the soldiers' endurance, but should also commemorate the price in autonomy paid by native peoples encountering an irresistible tide of cultural conquest from the East. Few events encapsulate so neatly the costs and benefits of America's march to the Pacific, making Fort Mojave's origins well worth understanding by Western historians and enthusiasts today. Welcome to our Southwest Desert channel, where today we dive into a pivotal moment in American Southwest history. We're taking you back to May 10th, 1869, to a seemingly unremarkable spot in the Utah desert, about 50 miles northwest of Ogden. On this day, a small group of dignitaries gathered to enact a ceremony that would mark the beginning of a new era of progress for the western United States. This is the story of the completion of the first Transcontinental Railroad. Picture this. It's a bright spring day in the Utah desert. The air is filled with anticipation as 4 special trains arrive, carrying numerous railroad officials and other dignitaries from both the East and West. The atmosphere is festive, with 4 companies of the 21st Infantry and 2 brass bands present to lend a proper air of importance to the occasion. Over 1,500 people have made the trek to this relatively isolated spot, braving the journey of 50 miles north and west from Ogden, or almost 90 miles from Salt Lake City, to witness a truly historic moment. The last 50-foot stretch of the roadbed has just been prepared by Chinese coolies, members of the Central Pacific Work Crews. These hard-working men have played a crucial role in the construction of this monumental project, facing numerous challenges and conflicts along the way. As the crowd gathers, the air is thick with excitement. At the center of attention are 2 men, Leland Stanford, President of Central Pacific and Governor of California, and Thomas C. Durant, Union Pacific Vice President. In their hands is a silver-headed spike maul, and before them lies a golden spike, a symbol of the monumental achievement about to be realized. Stanford steps up first, ready to drive the golden spike into place. The crowd holds its breath as he swings the maul, but in a surprising turn of events, he misses. The blow lands squarely in the middle of a rail, and the golden spike doesn't even quiver. Perhaps it was the telegraph wires dangling from the silver head of the mallet that threw off his aim, or maybe it was intentional. After all, a hole had been pre-bored in the tie to receive the spike, and the slightest tap would have driven it home. Not to be outdone, Durant takes his turn. He too swings and misses, almost certainly on purpose. The mall then makes its way through the hands of various dignitaries, each taking their turn to complete the driving of the $400 gold spike into place. As the final tap is made, a hush falls over the crowd. W.N. Schilling, a telegraph operator from Ogden, steps forward. With steady hands, he taps out a message that will be heard across the nation. The last rail is laid. The last spike is driven. The Pacific Railroad is completed. The joint of junction is 1,086 miles west of the Missouri River and 690 east of Sacramento. This simple ceremony marked the culmination of an era of railroad building unmatched in American history. With the driving of that golden spike, the nation had been bound together by bands of steel. It's hard to overstate the importance of this moment. Probably no other event did more to solidify the states than this union of the rails. To fully appreciate the significance, we need to understand the context. The United States had just emerged from the devastating Civil War, a conflict that had torn the nation apart. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad was more than just a feat of engineering. It was a powerful symbol of reunification, a physical link binding East and West. As the ceremony concludes, two engines, Central Pacific's Jupiter and Union Pacific's 119, inch toward each other over the new track. It's a moment of high drama as their cowcatchers meet, symbolizing the joining of the two great railroad companies. In a fitting celebration, bottles of champagne are broken over the engines, and the bubbly wine flows down over the golden spike and the last tie. The crews then take turns running their respective trains over the new section, a practical test of the newly joined tracks. The air is filled with cheers, the sound of the brass bands, and the hiss of steam from the locomotives. It's a moment of triumph, the realization of a dream that had seemed impossible just a few years before. But the story of the Transcontinental Railroad is about more than just this one day. It's a tale of ambition, conflict, and perseverance that spans years and thousands of miles. The journey to this moment began in 1862, when President Abraham Lincoln signed the Pacific Railroad Act. This act authorized the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads to build a single line from Omaha to Sacramento. It was an audacious plan requiring the railroad to cross vast prairies, scorching deserts, and the formidable Sierra Nevada mountains. The construction was a race against time and each other. The Central Pacific started in Sacramento and built eastward, while the Union Pacific started at the Missouri River and built westward. The two companies surveyed parallel lines, with the Central Pacific extending its grade through Ogden and up into Weber Canyon, while the Union Pacific was working well into Nevada. This competitive approach led to significant friction between the two companies. The Railroad Acts had stated that the two companies were to build toward each other until they met, but nothing in the law specified where they had to meet. This ambiguity led to parallel construction and numerous conflicts between the Union Pacific's Irish workers and the Central Pacific's Chinese laborers. The tension between the two companies grew so severe that Congress was eventually forced to intervene, naming Promontory as the official meeting point and setting May 10, 1869, as the date for the joining of the rails. The construction of the railroad was a monumental task, fraught with challenges. The Union Pacific faced hostile Native American tribes, harsh weather conditions, and the difficulty of supplying materials across vast distances. The Central Pacific, on the other hand, had to contend with the Sierra Nevada mountains, requiring extensive tunneling and the construction of numerous bridges. Both companies relied heavily on immigrant labor. The Central Pacific employed thousands of Chinese workers, who proved to be tireless and skillful laborers. These men faced discrimination and dangerous working conditions, but played a crucial role in the completion of the railroad. The Union Pacific, meanwhile, relied largely on Irish immigrants, many of whom were Civil War veterans. The work was backbreaking and dangerous. Workers used nitroglycerin to blast through solid rock, risking their lives with every explosion. They laid tracks across scorching deserts and freezing mountain passes, battling extreme weather and harsh terrain. Many lost their lives in the pursuit of this grand vision. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad had a profound impact on the United States. It dramatically reduced the time and cost of traveling across the country. What had once been a dangerous journey of several months by wagon train could now be accomplished in a matter of days. This new connectivity spurred economic growth and westward expansion. It opened up new markets for goods produced in the East and facilitated the settlement of the West. Towns and cities sprang up along the railroad, transforming the landscape of the American West. The railroad also played a crucial role in the industrialization of the United States. It allowed for the efficient transportation of raw materials and finished goods, fueling the growth of American industry. It standardized time zones across the country, a necessity for coordinating train schedules, which had far-reaching effects on American society. Despite its historic significance, Promontory's glory was relatively short-lived. The location of the junction, while symbolically important, proved to be less than ideal for efficient rail transport. The steep incline of the Promontory Range, requiring a climb of 90 feet to the mile, and the winding road built to negotiate this ascent became a serious handicap to rapid transportation on a large scale. By the turn of the century, this section of the road had become a bottleneck on the Transcontinental line. In response, the loosened cutoff was planned and constructed. Completed in 1903 and put into regular use in 1904, this new line went west from Ogden and straight across the north arms of Great Salt Lake to Lucin. The cutoff shortened the route by nearly 44 miles and reduced travel time between Ogden and Sacramento by 7 hours. While trains continued to run over the old Promontory line for many years after the completion of the cutoff, it gradually fell into disuse. The roadbed was allowed to deteriorate, and in 1942, in the midst of World War II, the old rails were torn up and sold as scrap metal. By the 1940s, Promontory stood as a ghost town, a silent witness to the momentous events of the past. A fine monument marked the spot where the union of the rails took place, though sadly, it had been marred by vandals who had used it as a rifle target. A few half-rotted ties and badly rusted spikes, possibly dating back to 1869, lied scattered about, mute testaments to the historic event that took place. Only 2 or 3 broken-down buildings remain to mark the spot of the once bustling railroad junction town. If we stand there today, looking out over the quiet Utah desert, it's hard to imagine the bustle and excitement of that day in May 1869. The driving of the Golden Spike at Promontory was more than just the completion of a railroad. It was a defining moment in American history, a symbol of national unity and progress. Though Promontory itself may now be little more than a ghost town, the legacy of what happened there lives on. Every time we board a train, every time we see goods transported across vast distances, we are experiencing the echoes of that momentous achievement. As we remember the driving of the Golden Spike, let us also remember the thousands of workers, Chinese, Irish, and others, who labored and sacrificed to make this dream a reality. Their story is an integral part of the American story, a reminder of the diverse forces that have shaped our nation. The Transcontinental Railroad may be a thing of the past, but its impact continues to resonate through American life. It remains a powerful symbol of what we can achieve when we work together towards a common goal, bridging divides and connecting communities. As we face the challenges of our own time, perhaps we can draw inspiration from this remarkable feat of 19th century engineering and cooperation. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Until next time, keep exploring the rich tapestry of American Southwest history. I hope you enjoyed these Southwest desert stories. If you would like to help support my channel and time, hit the Super Thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. Happy trails! Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.